Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm going to run you through how you can make that Anjuna Deep colorized Sakura / purified melodic house dreamy kind of feel by breaking down my track with Sleepless Skies, Lucid, which is going to be out now on Monowave Records. All right, here we are in the project. Now, this is a collaboration between myself and Sleepless Skies, so some of the stuff was done by Simon. Let's just take it from the top. So drum-wise, so not really anything super complex going on here. Like in a lot of melodic house tracks, a good groove with quite a lot of layering, but there's not really anything rhythmically super complex going on. So kick-wise, we just use a sample, and Simon really likes using this plugin called Snapback, which is pretty cool. It like adds like a little bit of like a reverse sound just before a sound comes in, which makes it actually punch through a lot more. So take a listen. And without it. So it kind of like adds a little like just before. So it makes the kick click punch through a little bit more in the mix. So it's a cool little plugin. It's not like, you know, an essential component, I would say, in like creating solid punchy kicks, but it's a fun little thing you can add in every now and then if you feel your kick's not cutting through the mix. Then we have this drum rack where this is something I do quite often. I will program in the important elements of the groove, so things like snares and offbeat hi-hats. Now if we open this up, there are a few things to note here. So the snare / clap has 4 layers. So if we look in here, in drum rack, there's 4 layers. So there's some which provide the main timbre. So there's that layer. That layer's a little bit more sort of organic and tonal. There's this layer, which is a bit more of like a classic snare kind of sound and a bit in the lower register. And there's this one, which is, again, a bit more sort of organic and pushed back. So altogether, sounds like this. And on the group, you just got a little bit of compression just to like glue it all together, and a bit of overdrive just to add a tiny little bit more grit. I do this quite a lot on drum elements. Just have an overdrive, drag and drop it on, put it to the high range, and have about 5 to 20% wet, depending on how gritty you want it. You should be quite easy on this, because too much overdrive or distortion is just going to tear the transients apart, so you just want a little bit. On the hats as well, same concept. We have a bunch of layers. So there's this layer here. There's a bit more of like a high-pitched hat. There's this layer, which sounds quite similar to the other layer, so it's just going to thicken it up a bit. There's this layer. It's a bit more of like a 909 kind of sound, and then this layer, which is a bit more of like a gritty shaker sound. And same concept, just got a bit of glue compression taking place, and here there was like a pretty grim resonance here that we just took out. Now if you look at the programming, this is quite interesting. This is something that I use a lot. So there's some ghost notes. So if you listen to the full groove, there's like boom, kind of thing going on. And it's really nice because you can create more interesting grooves, but using the same elements already. So rather than just putting like a metric ton of sounds into your groove, use the same sounds, but like drop the velocity down, and it's going to feel a bit more natural and like a real drummer's playing it. So yes, I am a real drummer. You might probably see the drums behind me in videos, but this concept is really important. It makes your drums sound so much more sophisticated by having ghost notes in, which are basically just much quieter notes on like a snare drum or a hi-hat or something. It really helps emphasize the groove. On just the whole track in general, we have a subtle amount of swing. So we're swinging 16th notes by a small amount. So 53, this number here, the closer to 50 it is, 50 is no swing, and then the closer to 50 it is, the less swing you have, and then the closer to 75 it is, the more swing you have. So this is a minor amount of swing, but it just helps the groove feel a little bit less robotic in tandem with the ghost notes. Now, we have a bunch of loops. Now, I like using loops every now and then. Sometimes I'll program all of my drums. Sometimes I'll just throw loops in just because it's a little bit quicker. So we have like a bunch of shakers here. So there's a few layers. There's this one, which is on the left. This one, which is on the right. And this one's in the center. Which is very, very subtle. Right? Now, we also have some 16th note rolling hats. And this has some velocity modulation, so it's going like that kind of groove. So it's accented, which is another important thing. Most people just use like very straight timing for velocity, and it sounds just like there's no groove, but you can have or something like that. Makes a really big difference, actually, even though it's subtle in your drum grooves. We also have a bunch of percussion loops. So this is this one. This one is a bit more in the higher mids. And this is a sort of like weird percussive layer. So altogether, it sounds like this. It's not a really like complicated groove, but it's just like well chosen and the sounds work together well, right? And then on the drum group, everything together. This is my drum rack here. So if you want this drum rack, we give it away in one of our courses. They're all for free. The link will be in the description if you want to sign up to that. There's a bunch of courses in there on mixing, mastering, arrangement, sound design, melody writing, music theory, and workflow, all sorts of stuff. So go check that out. It's totally for free. Just pop your email in and boom, you get all those courses. Cool. Let's move on to the bass. So the bass has two components. One's a rhythmic bass, one's a sustained bass, and the sustained bass has 3 layers. Let's just talk about the rhythmic bass for now. Let's do it in context of the kick as well, just so you can get a feel for it. Now, I have frozen this just so I can play this in the project. This is just basically following a pretty simple chord progression. The track is in B flat minor. So it goes 1, 7, 6, and that's basically it. 1, 7, 6, and just that chord progression. And it's playing in like an offbeat rhythm. So if we play it from here, bum ba bum 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 ba bum bum. Pretty straightforward. This is a classic sound I use in a lot of Marksman tracks, which is actually, it comes from a kick. So if you shave off the attack of a kick, so the initial transient, you basically just have in a lot of ways, a sort of distorted sine kind of wave thing. So this looks kind of a bit more like a saw wave in a way, or like a sort of warped sine wave. And it's like a nice punchy tone. Just shave off the initial part, add a little bit of a fade, add a ton of distortion, and there you have it. Nice stabby bass. Now, the sustained bass has 3 elements. There's just a deep like sine wave bass thing. I think it might actually be a triangle wave, but it's just like providing the sub. It's in mono. And then you have this main bass layer here. It's like a big gritty like Reese style bass, also from Diva, and we're playing with the filter frequency. So throughout the track it like opens up. So here it's quite dark, and then later on, like towards the break, it opens up. Very noisy, very big and warm. And then we also have a actually, no, there's only 2 layers. Sorry, I lied. There's 2 layers on this bass. Now, on this main component, we've also added wider. So because this is frozen, I can't show you, but basically you just widen the bass up so it's huge, but obviously you don't want to do that on your sub because you want your sub to be super tight and in the middle. On the groups, this is just to sidechain to the stabby bass. So whenever the stabby bass hits, it's going to duck the main bass, like here, for example. See here, it's just ducking the subs and the sort of lower mids to allow that stabby bass to cut through. That's basically it with the bass line. It's not super complicated. There's also this like dirty brass sound, which on the drop we just felt like, well, this is after the break. We felt it needed a little bit of a lift. So there's this sound, which we made from, I think it was the sustained bass, and just resampled it and then ran it through a ton of distortion and stuff. And it's just the audio here, but like that's basically what we did. This dirty brass sound is basically that same sound, but reversed and on a different note. So you have this. And it's going through a big reverb. It's also going through decapitator, so the reverb is actually distorted. So listen to how it sounds here. Just adds a nice little transitional effect. Now, let's talk about the vocals. So Simon actually chose these. They're like, there's a couple of vocal chops. I don't know where he got them from. I'm assuming Splice, but it sounds like this. There's like a little ooh kind of thing. And then there's this pattern here. And that's pretty nice. And in context of, let's just solo everything. Yeah, so you get this. And on this, there's just a little bit of delay, reverb, and it's like mostly in the mids. So if you cut out the lows of vocals, they sound thinner. And if you cut out the highs, it kind of pushes them back a bit. So it feels like these vocals are pushed back into the mix and coming from a further distance away, which is kind of the intention, really. Other than that, it's just like sample-based stuff. There's not really much to talk about there. There's this thing called the gritty motif, which sounds like this. Which is like, there's two layers. There's this. And this one. Which is a bit more of like a soft, plucky sound. And then you have this sort of weird stereo one. And this is just kind of playing through the whole track. It starts off quite dark over here. And then it gets quite bright over here. During the breakdown. But nothing really complicated going on. Like at the start, it's just playing this. Like do 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 do. And then later on, it starts playing a bit more melodically. Do 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 do. Just has a little bit of progression to it. But that's kind of it, really. Nothing super complicated going on. Now, the main ARP lead here, this is, I guess, like the signature leading element. So it starts off quite dark in the mix over here. Like the filter's super closed. And it plays like, basically, the chord progression. So you have two notes here, which are like power chords of the chord progression. So da da da, basically. And then it's got like a few variations each time it goes round. So the first time, da 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 da. Then it goes da 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 da. And that's essentially it. Like nothing super complicated. It does have a few more variations going on, but then during the break, we're just playing this. Just that initial chord. Right? And then later on in the track, it goes to the full progression. And then what's interesting about this part is it gets kind of wonky towards the end of the break here. There's we play with the tuning using a shifter. Gets kind of wonky. And we wash it out. Right? Now, speaking of this part, like during the actual arrangement, there's like a cool thing that Simon suggested we do. So during this part here, you're expecting the drop to take place here. Right? Right there, you expect the kick and everything to come in, but we actually delay it a little bit. We have the bass come in, and then there's a little drum fill. People are expecting that epic moment, so that it's like there, they're like, oh, it's here, but then wait, it's a little bit different, and then when the drum fill comes in, the rest of the drums come in. So just take a listen from maybe here. Get that sound. And you have that big emphatic climax after the drop, which is pretty cool. Let's take a look at the pianos. So the piano chords are really nice in this. These chords here. So I would say Simon is probably responsible for the piano programming, I would say. He used Labs, which is a free piano. Soft piano. Sounds really nice like this. Hits you right in the feels, man. And then I came in with this like technique, which I do quite a lot, where you take a piano. So this is actually a different piano. It doesn't really matter what you use. But then what you do is you have like an audio effect rack, and you can, so this is a dry chain. You can have the dry chain in as well. But in this chain, we have a chain within a chain, and we have crystallizer and portal. So take a listen to how this sounds. Like very sort of ethereal and trippy. But you can have the original piano in as well if you want. But we chose not to have it in, so it's just a bit more sort of textural. So if you listen with the other pianos. So ethereal and emotive. Brings a tear to your eye, doesn't it? Then the pads, like nothing really crazy going on here. It's just like a nice warm diva pad. I think it's being filtered in, or is it? No, it's not. Just to support the piano, basically. Then there's this harmonics group, which just has like a bunch of sort of textures and stuff. So there's this tone, which sounds like this, which is just playing the whole way through. It's just like an atmosphere, really, just to sort of set the tone. There's this tone 2 here, just very quiet, but very, very quiet. This is at like minus 39 dB, so it's super subtle. And then there's tone 3, which sounds like this. So the key to this style is having a lot of tonal atmospheres and a lot of layers. So yeah, if you've got an old computer, it's kind of hard to do this, and you might have to flatten a lot of stuff to audio or freeze it. There's also this synth rhythm here, which sounds like this. Just like a sort of gritty texture. And then there's this reverses group here, which sounds like this. Which just kind of plays every now and then to like re-trigger the loop, basically. So all of the tones here together sound like this. So it's just like a really sort of gritty textural atmosphere. You also have this thing called a plinky arp, which sounds like this. Which is, again, quite atmospheric. There's this weird sample, which I can't remember how it sounds, but oh yeah, here you go. Playing a little melody. Quite subtle in the background. You have this high beeps, which is very ethereal. And just at the start, actually, you have this LFO pad, which sounds like this. It opens up here. And then closes. So it's, again, very textural. And then this is a sound I created called the LFO wob. This was like kind of a core component of the track. So this is interesting because we're actually automating the LFO rate and also doing some pitch bending here. So each one of these is slightly different. So take a listen here. This. They're pretty cool, right? It's going which is quite cool. Then this one over here does a slightly different shape. And then over here, slightly different as well. And then this one's slightly different. So it's quite a nice thing for transitions. Like if you listen subtly in the background to this part, I think this is going into the final drop. Right? It's like a nice transitional effect. Stuff like that is a lot more sophisticated than just like throwing a crazy riser from out of a sample pack in. But all of the harmonics together sound like, let's go to a place where they're all playing, maybe over here. So it's like very textural in a lot of ways. And that's kind of it. That's the track. So there you have it. That's the track. I guess the key takeaway from this is lots of layers. Now, I've worked with Simon on a few tracks together. He does like his layers, and that's why his sound's very rich and sophisticated, because there's a lot of layers. Now, of course, you do need to find sounds that complement each other really well. Don't just add stuff for the sake of adding it, and try basically to fill holes in the stereo spectrum and also EQ spectrum. That's kind of the rationale with layering. You don't need to do it if you've got a sound that's already full spectrum and like quite stereo, or you don't want it to be stereo or whatever. But that's kind of the way you should go about it, I would say. But yeah, there you have it, guys. So the track's out now on Monowave Records. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you want to go check it out. Well, please do check it out. Please do give it at least 1 million streams if you can. That would be super appreciated. And if you enjoyed this content, make sure you like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And it's worth noting as well that Simon, Sleepless Skies, is one of our star Professional House and Techno Producer students and alumni. So he's signed to labels like Colorize, and he's featured on Above and Beyond's Group Therapy twice, and is really absolutely killing it right now. We have a few tracks together. I've done remixes of him, and he's awesome. So Simon's able to finish at least a track every single week, and it's worth noting as well, like, he has a family and he also works, but even with that, he can finish a track every single week, sometimes even 2, and the kind of tracks that are signing to top melodic house labels like Colorize, Monowave, Sakura, Hathor, and many, many more. And he's getting hundreds of thousands of streams on his music. So if you want to be like Simon, there's a link in the description where you can watch a video which explains exactly what Simon went through our Professional House and Techno Producer program, explains how it all works, what you get, and the kind of person you need to be in the program. It's not for everybody. Make sure you watch the video to make sure it's for you. And if all sounds good, you can book a call with me or Tim, TJ Lawton, and we can have a conversation about bringing you on if it's right for you. If not, no worries. We'll see you in the next video. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and hope you enjoyed. Go check out the track.